The Dark Sovereign, who was cultivating, suddenly became alert in the dark court. He opened his eyes, looked into the distance and called out, "Dong Huang." The Dark Sovereign, who was cultivating, suddenly became alert in the dark court. He opened his eyes, looked into the distance and called out, "Dong Huang." A phantom appeared in the distance, and it was none other than Dong Huang the Great. At this moment, all the cultivators above the dark court were waiting cautiously, looking at Dong Huang the Great. What was he doing here? "Are you unhappy to see me?" Dong Huang the Great queried. "Come on in," the Dark Sovereign replied lightly. Immediately, Dong Huang the Great moved forward as he entered inside the dark court and stepped onto the highest point of the dark divine palace. Out front, the Dark Sovereign was sitting cross-legged and cultivating. A terrifying dark storm loomed in the sky above and enveloped the entire court. "Are you here to ask for peace?" the Dark Sovereign asked. "Before I came here, I saw a bright continent within the bounds of the dark court. Who is the woman on the continent?" Dong Huang the Great asked. "It has nothing to do with you," the Dark Sovereign responded nonchalantly. "Coexistence of light and darkness. It's interesting for you to allow such a place to exist in the center of the dark world." Dong Huang the Great continued, "You must know something about what happened back then, and that the human ancestor is not as he seems on the outside. He has been inciting several of you to destroy the divine prefecture, killing Ji Wudao, and invading the heaven realm, all because the existence of the divine prefecture and the heaven realm impeded on his plans. In reality, what the human ancestor always wanted was to rule over the world. This was also why after he thought he had killed me, he proceeded to attack you. I'm sure you are aware of it already. Say whatever you are here to say." The Dark Sovereign did not seem to have much patience. Many things were well known to them without beating around the bush too much. If the human ancestor succeeded in his ambition and ruled the world, what he would do to you will need no further description from me. Dong Huang the Great ignored the other's response and continued, "Perhaps it will be as you wish, that the world will turn into total darkness. However, your idea for the order of the world to be remade will probably be shattered. The human ancestor will control everything in the world, and the cultivation world will fall into eternal darkness until the eruption of the next battle of heavenly path. Please keep reading on MYB0xn0VL. Perhaps no matter who rules the world, the result will be the same. Only through destruction can we be reborn again," the Dark Sovereign said coldly, wisps of destructive aura pervading from him. It was so terrifying that he appeared like a god of the apocalypse. The goal of the Dark Sovereign was to bring darkness and destruction to the world. Only when everything was destroyed would rebirth be possible, and a different world could appear. If so, destruction is just another cycle of reincarnation. The next world will still follow the same old path. What will be the difference? Dong Huang the Great remained steady in his aura. This world does not need destruction, but a different world with different people in charge of its order. The Dark Sovereign stared at him, only to hear Dong Huang the Great's reply, "Whatever you choose, choose carefully." Having said that, Dong Huang the Great turned around to leave without wasting another minute. They were both intelligent individuals, and at this level, he didn't need to say too much. Sometimes it was enough to have the key points clarified. The Dark Sovereign had never concealed his own will, which was to destroy the world, thus reshaping it. This was something that Dong Huang the Great already knew. Therefore, he asked the other to consider carefully the kind of outcome that would be in line with his will. If it was an impossibility, what would be the choice of the Dark Sovereign? In the Devil World realm, at the Devil Imperial Palace, Dong Huang the Great also arrived to see the Devil Emperor. In front of the Demon God Palace, the Devil Emperor looked at Dong Huang the Great and said, "Dong Huang, your plan has been realized. What are you doing here?" "Where is Yusheng?" Dong Huang the Great asked, but it was about Yusheng. The Devil Emperor frowned and replied, "He's cultivating." Futian and Yusheng grew up together since childhood. Their fathers were good friends, and their mothers were sisters. Therefore, no matter where they stand in the future, they will be the best of brothers. Yusheng's affairs will naturally be Futian's affairs. Dong Huang the Great looked at the Devil Emperor and continued, "I hope one day I can see the two of them fight side by side." When he finished speaking, Dong Huang the Great bowed slightly and left. He was here only to deliver a brief message before he was gone. He didn't mention the divine prefecture and the devil world, nor whatever that had transpired between them. It was just about Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. But there were already enough hints in what he said. If the devil emperor intended to have Yu Sheng inherit the devil world, then in the future, Yi Futian would not do anything detrimental to the devil world. Before, the devil emperor also heard something. That if a supreme figure were to appear in the world, the devil world would not continue to suffer from the devil abyss. Similarly, Dong Huang the Great also went to the empty divine realm to see the evil emperor. 3 phantoms found 3 of the 6 emperors simultaneously, bringing different messages. At present, the divine prefecture and heaven realm were facing the threat of the human ancestor. Naturally, they did not want to repeat like the last time, being surrounded and besieged by the other 4 realms. More importantly, he knew that the human realm had always hidden its true strengths. Before, the human ancestor thought that the battle of the 6 emperors would be the end of it all, so some forces were not mobilized. But inside the human divine palace, Ji Wudao had witnessed it. In the heaven realm, many cultivators were now pouring into the heavenly imperial city, wanting to enter the 99 heavens to cultivate. In heavenly imperial city, top figures from all over the heaven realm also gathered. Some hesitated whether to join the heavenly imperial palace and become part of the 99 heavens. Among them, there were many near-deity existences. At this moment, an astonishing aura suddenly appeared in the sky above heavenly imperial city. Many people sensed a coercion, their brows slightly knitted. They looked up at the firmament, and that sense of coercion was getting stronger, as if signifying the arrival of some terrifying figure. Emperor's might. At this time, inside the heavenly imperial city, the hearts of some high-level elders were beating wildly. They felt the emperor's might, and it was more than just one that they felt. Several great emperors had arrived and descended on heavenly imperial city. Everyone's hearts were palpitating. Was there about to be another war? Who were they that was coming to the heavenly imperial city? Above the firmament, an unparalleled figure appeared. He was clad in a dark green robe, as his black hair flew wildly in the wind. He was a middle-aged great emperor. Standing there, he was like a god who ruled this heaven and earth. At the same time, in other different directions, there were also other great emperors there, standing above the firmament. At this moment, the entire heavenly imperial city was suffocated. Even the existences of the near-deity level felt a sense of powerlessness. Even individuals who were great emperors to be trembled in their hearts. Who are they? Everyone's heart was trembling. At the same time, Dong Huang the Great, sitting cross-legged above the heavenly palace in the 99 heavens, opened his eyes. His eyes seemed to penetrate directly through the 99 heavens. He looked outside and saw those descending great emperors. It came sooner than he had expected. Had the human ancestor finally begun using his hidden power? Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Several figures flickered and appeared in front of Dong Huang the Great. You guys stay here. I'll go out and take a look, said Dong Huang the Great. As soon as he took a step forward, he disappeared from the heavenly palace. Then, he came outside of the 99 heavens. 9 great emperors had appeared in the sky above heavenly imperial city, and they were scattered in various positions. When Dong Huang the Great appeared, his eyes fell directly on the great emperor, who was at the very top in the sky. This great emperor was brilliant all over, and the silver cloak on his body was like heavenly armor. He had a sharp sensation all about him, and his eyes had an icy metal feel to them. He was the head of these 9 great emperors. More importantly, a primordial aura pervaded from them, as if they were from ancient times. Ancient emperors. Dong Huang the Great realized who they were with an accessing look at the 9 figures. You are the great emperors from before the collapse of the heavenly path. No one responded. Above the firmament, an extremely sharp divine light came from the great emperor clad in the silver cloak. The sharpness in those rays of divine light was enough to tear apart the void and obliterate those around them. Please keep reading on MYB0XN0VL. Calm revelation divine power surged around Dong Huang the Great. When the sharp divine light descended, It was blocked by the revelation divine power. I had heard that in the times before the collapse of the heavenly path, in the fight against the heavens, many extraordinary great emperors were involved. Among them was Xinjia the great emperor, who was physically invincible. Yet there was rumored to be one other besides him, extraordinary and unparalleled in the world, known as the divine emperor Futian. In ancient times, he had used his body of flesh and blood to rip apart the gods of the house Karura. His attack prowess was undeniable, Dong Huang the Great said as he looked at that great emperor. Once upon a time, there were some ancient volumes kept in the heavenly palace, which recorded stories and characters in the times before the collapse of the heavenly path. Among them, there were tales about divine emperor Futian. Any great emperor had to be extraordinarily talented to use the title of divine emperor. He had to be someone with a remarkable war record, having killed many other existences, who were also great emperors. I didn't expect that after such a long time that there would be people who still remember me, Divine Emperor Futian said with a sigh, but his eyes were still sharp. He looked at Dong Huang the Great and said, "However, I'm still going to kill you today." When the heavenly path collapsed, it was known as the end of the gods. The heavenly path brought down apocalyptic catastrophes, so that cultivators in the imperial realm could not continue to survive in this world. Nonetheless, there were still many great emperors who managed to exist in another form and did not disappear entirely, Dong Huang the Great said in a low voice. The people in the heavenly imperial city knew some of what he said, which had also been confirmed over the years. Indeed, there were many extraordinary great emperors who remained in the world, existing in other ways without completely disappearing. The human ancestor is the oldest great emperor who survived in the era after the collapse of the heavenly path. I heard that in the past countless years after the collapse of the heavenly path, he has been searching for traces of the existence of the gods. As the only great emperor who had survived the catastrophe back then, the human ancestor has found many ancient emperors. Dong Huang the Great continued, "You are all elders from the ancient times. You must be those who the human ancestor found in the past countless years, and he has found a way to bring you back." The words of Dong Huang the Great shocked everyone, and the hearts of everyone in heavenly imperial city were palpitating. They had a feeling that Dong Huang the Great was correct in what he said, simply because it all made sense. The human ancestor was the most ancient of the great emperors. He was an existence that had survived in the era after the collapse of the heavenly path, hence his title as the human ancestor. How could he not have looked for those ancient emperors, and any traces of them all these years? After the collapse of the heavenly path, when the gods of that era fell, how many treasures of heaven and earth were left behind? And how many otherworldly figures existed in other forms? It was impossible for the human ancestor to let them all go. No matter how one looked at it, the human ancestor might be the strongest existence in the world right now. But his strength was actually on a par with the other 6 great emperors, which was indeed a bit strange. Dong Huang the Great did not want to say this just for the world to hear. But more importantly, it was meant for the other great emperors among the 6 great emperors. He had reminded them that the human ancestor was not a simple character, but someone with hidden depth. Whatever everyone saw before was all an illusion. It was whatever the human ancestor wanted the world to see. The human ancestor had great ambition, which meant to plot against the heavenly path. Now, at the dawn of the age of the gods, many great emperors had returned, and the human ancestor seemed to have completed a very crucial step. He was actively resuscitating those ancient emperors and making their returns possible. Hence, the great emperor who appeared at Yi Imperial Palace, the great emperor who fought against Ji Wudao, and the great emperors who appeared here at this moment. However, judging the situation at hand, Divine Emperor Futian had to be the most powerful emperor among those who had returned. There was no way of knowing if the human ancestor had other extraordinary great emperors who might return one day. Of course, the human ancestor from before was also not the same human ancestor they were seeing now. As for what was really going on behind the scenes, Dong Huang the Great couldn't completely figure it out, so he could only speculate. This news was definitely an earth-shaking secret to the cultivators in the world. that the human ancestor had been collecting the legacy of the gods since the collapse of the heavenly path. Also, he had now discovered ways for them to return and fight for him. If so, who else in this world could stop the human ancestor? The unification of the world was all but a foregone conclusion. Who else could stop it? If what Dong Huang the Great said was true, then the key would be how many great emperors did the human ancestor have under his control, and whether he could make all of them return eventually. Divine Emperor Pujuan did not make a response to Dong Huang the Great. Nonetheless, Dong Huang the Great's estimation was very accurate. In today's world, what is the strength of the great emperors who stand at the pinnacle of the cultivation world? Divine Emperor Pujuan asked. When his voice fell, the sky behind him burst into an unparalleled divine glory that seemed to have turned into a divine matrix, inside of which were infinite divine arms. At the same time, the other 8 great emperors also released their utmost divine power. Above the firmament, they were enveloped by an unparalleled divine power. The hearts of the cultivators in the heavenly imperial palace were beating wildly, and those whose cultivation was weaker dared not approach. They were staying as far away from the battlefield as possible. The divine power of revelation exploded from Dong Huang the Great, covering the boundless space. He looked up into the heavens, and astounding fighting will surged from his eyes. His robe fluttered and accentuated his undeniable magnificence. What if he was facing the ancient divine emperor? Dong Huang the Great himself was the pinnacle existence of the world, ruling all of the divine prefecture. Just as Yi Futian said before, this era did not belong to those from the past. Today, I am looking forward to experience the power of the ancient divine emperor firsthand. We may fight, Dong Huang the Great declared loudly, his voice resounding throughout the heavens. At the same time, when his voice faded, the revelation divine realm was also released to its limit. For a time, except for Divine Emperor Pujuan, the other 8 great emperors felt as if they had been suppressed to the extreme by that divine power. It was difficult for them to move. What kind of divine power is this? He asked Dong Huang the Great. Clearly, Divine Emperor Pujuan also sensed the extraordinary force behind the divine power of revelation. Divine power revelation, replied Dong Huang the Great. When he created the divine power of revelation, it was comprehended together. The divine power of revelation could reach the height of cultivation, and it was a supreme kind of divine power. Dong Huang the Great and his wife had cultivated together, exploring the order between heaven and earth, as well as various other kinds of divine powers. Dong Huang the Great and his wife had cultivated together, exploring the order between heaven and earth, as well as various other kinds of divine powers. Divine powers were distinguished by strengths, and there were strong ones as well as weaker ones. By comprehending different divine powers, the gaps between them could also be significant. For example, the divine power of the 5 elements was hard-pressed to compete with the divine power of the spatial rules. Each great emperors comprehended and perceived their own divine powers. If their divine power was strong, so was their combat effectiveness. The human ancestor could summon the chaotic divine thunder, and its power was second to none. What Dong Huang the Great and his wife had been looking for back then was a divine power that could lead to the height of cultivation. The divine power of revelation held such potential. At the end of revelation, there was absolutely nothing. Everything in the world would be turned into nothingness. How terrible would that be? There would be no time, no space, as time and space would be annihilated and things into a dead silence. This was a path that Dong Huang the Great carved out based on some extraordinary Buddhist methods. A path that would lead to the epitome of cultivation. Naturally, the divine power of time and space was an extremely powerful divine power, and Jiwudao's black hole divine power. These were top-level divine powers. Please keep reading on MYB0X and 0VL. Calm when the revelation divine domain erupted, the 9 great emperors, except Divine Emperor Pujuan, were summarily suppressed at the same time. The divine power of the revelation seemed to have invaded their bodies and completely imprisoned their divine powers. This caused a change of expression on the faces of the 8 great emperors, and their hearts were shaking. They had perished under the apocalyptic catastrophes that destroyed the world ever since the collapse of the heavenly path, but managed to continue their existences in another form. It was only countless years later that they had this opportunity to return. However, this era had changed, and it was no longer the same as before. In this era, great emperors were scarce. The 6 emperors were the strongest in the world. The mission they were tasked with was to kill Dong Huang the Great, one of the 6 emperors, and his descendants. However, they could never have imagined that today, countless years later, the era had long changed. Even though the age of the gods had long since passed, and this was now an era when great emperors were rare, there were still extraordinary characters to contend with. This Dong Huang the Great, in the era before the collapse of the heavenly path, would be another top-level great emperor existence with dominant and aggressive strength. 9 divine swords appeared in front of Dong Huang the Great, and each divine sword contained unparalleled divine glory. They pointed toward the 9 great emperors. He stepped into the void, surrounded by the divine radiance that could only belong to a great emperor. As one of the most powerful great emperors in the world, Dong Huang the Great was an extraordinary figure. At the moment when the revelation divine domain exploded, he had incarnated as the ruler of this world. Since you have already died once, why bother coming back now? Dong Huang the Great declared loud and clear. His voice shook heaven and earth. As soon as his voice fell, the 9 swords traversed through the void, zooming in at all 9 great emperors for the kill. 1 sword for each man. Every sword was like a punishment from above, flashing with terrifying divine glory that shuttled through the space. In an instant, the bodies of 4 great emperors were penetrated. This was not because they were weaklings, but because of the divine power of revelation was far too strong. Under the suppression of the divine power of revelation, their strengths dropped dramatically, and they were obliterated by the divine sword in an instant. The 4 other great emperors exerted their utmost powers, but they could still stop the swords unleashed by Dong Huang the Great. Accompanied by the strong light beams that shot out, the divine swords broke through everything and penetrated the other 4 great emperors one after another. They, too, were immolated in a blink of an eye. In a brief moment, all 8 great emperors were wiped out. They had turned to dust, obliterated by Dong Huang the Great. Since they had already died once, why bother to return now? They were sent back whence they came. This unparalleled shocking blow caused 8 brilliant rays of light to erupt from the sky simultaneously, which made the hearts of the cultivators in the heavenly imperial city beat wildly. Their eyes were filled with shock. Previously, Futian had immolated 7 emperors with 1 spear strike, and now Dong Huang the Great killed 8 emperors with 1 sword strike. Both father and son demonstrated unparalleled terrifying combat effectiveness. Countless people in heavenly imperial city looked up at the sky. They had not witnessed the battle of the 6 emperors previously, as they had only heard about it. Today, their hearts trembled as they witnessed the terrifying power of Dong Huang the Great with their own eyes. This was Dong Huang, the lord of the divine prefecture, one of the 6 emperors. He was the most powerful out of the 6 strongest beings in the world. Of course, the 9th divine sword from Dong Huang the Great was blocked by the divine emperor Futian, who then destroyed it. Obviously, divine emperor Futian was not on the same level as the other 8 great emperors. Even so, he still showed a strange look. His attention was fixed on Dong Huang. It seemed that he had underestimated the ruler of the current world. The strength of Dong Huang the Great was indeed powerful. The 8 great emperors who were immolated were pretty powerful and definitely were not weaklings. However, they were killed by Dong Huang the Great in 1 blow. On the same battlefield, the divine emperor Futian could certainly feel this force. He knew that the revelation divine realm had suppressed all 8 great emperors. Under the suppression of the divine power of the revelation, the 8 great emperors were weakened to the extreme, and none of them could unleash their divine powers freely. The result was demonstrated now. They had no chance to fully extend their powers before they were obliterated by Dong Huang. Kill. As soon as the voice of the divine emperor Futian fell, the infinite divine arms behind him shot out in the direction of Dong Huang the Great. In an instant, the void collapsed and shattered, and those countless divine arms moved to pulverize the sky. The sharp eyes of Dong Huang the Great glanced at the sky above, as he was surrounded by the light screen forged with the divine power of the revelation. Those incoming divine arms were condensed by divine power, and were greatly hindered when they traversed the revelation divine domain. Later, they were blocked by the light screen. Gradually, they had lost their powers. Bang! Donghuang the Great moved his thoughts, and those divine arms disintegrated and pulverized, shattered at almost the same time. At the same time, Donghuang the Great floated higher into the sky. As one of the strongest figures in the world, what could the ancient emperor do to him, even if they had returned? It was inconceivable for him to be at a disadvantage. In this world, no one could look down on Donghuang the Great. The age of gods has come again, and the world will have a place to accommodate the likes of ancient emperors from the past. Although I don't know what relationship you have with the ancestors, or what kind of agreements exist between you two, I hope you do not get involved, said Donghuang the Great as he looked at Divine Emperor Pujuan. The silver robe fluttered on the Divine Emperor Pujuan, his eyes fixed on Donghuang the Great with extreme sharpness. In the next moment his body moved, aiming straight towards Donghuang the Great. The speed of someone at this level of cultivation was beyond frightening. Even the revelation divine domain could not stop his physical body. It was utterly unable to suppress the divine power of the Divine Emperor Pujuan. Donghuang the Great raised his hand and stretched it out, and the divine power of revelation directly covered the body of Divine Emperor Pujuan. Still, his opponent's body had already transformed. It was no longer a body of flesh and blood, but a body of wei, incomparably sharp. To be mentioned in the same breath as Xinjia the Great Emperor. One could only imagine how terrifying Divine Emperor Pujuan's body was. An extremely glorious divine light penetrated through the divine power of the revelation, piercing into the defensive light screen that surrounded Donghuang the Great. An extremely terrifying divine light illuminated everything as he raised his hand and pointed at Donghuang the Great. This finger was like the sharpest weapon, shattering all existence. Just as this finger was about to penetrate the brow chakra of Donghuang the Great, an unparalleled divine light appeared all around Donghuang the Great. When the finger came near him, its divine power seemed to be disarmed and turned into absolutely nothing. Even though the divine power crumbled within the void, the same did not happen to the attack from Divine Emperor Pujuan. His whole person glowed, and he was shrouded in silver divine light. He no longer had a material body, but a body of the great path. Even though the divine power crumbled within the void, the same did not happen to the attack from Divine Emperor Pujuan. His whole person glowed, and he was shrouded in silver divine light. He no longer had a material body, but a body of the great path. His body grew large, as did his palm. His fingers turned into an imperial arm that pierced the domain of void, annihilating and recreating things. There was nothing it could not destroy, and it was attempting to prove it now. Although Donghuang the Great was powerful to the point that he was even capable of forming the domain of void around himself, he did not believe that Donghuang the Great could maintain his revelation divine power at its supreme state forever. If his revelation divine power had turned into the void, Donghuang the Great would have ruled over the world long ago already. Donghuang the Great blasted the air with his left hand, and the hit landed directly onto Divine Emperor Pujuan's body. With a loud sound, the supreme state of the divine power vanished, and both their bodies were thrown back at the same time. They withdrew, widening the distance between themselves. Donghuang the Great's terrifying fist attack did not result in any lasting damage toward Divine Emperor Pujuan. It was as if he had put on the armor of Tianxin, making his physical body unsurpassable and unbreakable. Bang! A loud sound broke out, and Divine Emperor Pujuan stepped forward. All at once, numerous rays of divine light enveloped the boundless area. It was as if the entirety of the vast heavenly imperial city was bound within the perimeters of the divine domain. The cultivators of the heavenly imperial city felt as if the world around had turned silver. It was a cold and hard world, and they realized that they were no longer able to move their bodies. They were all under the control of the divine power enveloping the area, and were absolutely trapped. Their bodies were wrapped in silver divine light. It seemed like they had also been transformed into the same silver body as Divine Emperor Pujuan. The difference was that this body was a part of Divine Emperor Pujuan's divine power. So he had full control over it. But when it came to them, they were captives. It seemed as if the whole world had come to a standstill, and that the heavenly imperial city had become a world of ice, formed from numerous statues. Dong Huang the Great frowned, and increased the intensity of his revelation divine power to its maximum level. It enveloped the entire heavenly imperial city, reducing the strength of Divine Emperor Pujuan's divine power. He looked toward Divine Emperor Pujuan and stated, "You do realize you are an ancient Divine Emperor, don't you? This fight is between us. There is no reason to implicate innocent people. Please keep reading on MYB0X and 0VL. Calm as he finished speaking, he rose toward the boundless upper regions of the sky. Divine Emperor Pujuan turned into a beam of silver light and followed him. The two were beams of light, and they moved vertically upward, providing respite to the cultivators in the heavenly imperial city. They looked at the boundless upper sky, and were vaguely able to make out the two legendary figures standing facing each other. Their divine domains of the Great Path were restraining each other, and were terrifying divine powers capable of holding the other captive. Subsequently, they saw the sky light up with a dazzling divine glow. It looked as if it was a light full of murderous intent. Both emperors rushed at each other, resulting in an earth-shattering effect that left even the heavenly imperial city shaking, though it was separated by the boundless space. In the 99 heavens, Futian, who had been cultivating behind closed doors, felt as if he had been shocked wide awake. He raised his eyebrows like he had sensed something. Shortly after, the scene of a horrendous battle appeared in his mind's eye. It was that between Divine Emperor Pujuan and Dong Huang the Great. His eyes sprung wide open. A cold divine light filled his black jet pupils. It was unbelievable that a strange contender had come to take them on again. And this one was powerful enough to go head-to-head with Father. Just who was he? Futian flitted down to the lower sky region. Immediately, many cultivators gathered around to see him. This was the first time Futian had woken up ever since he started meditating on the Great Path. How much progress had he made? Just going by his appearance, they could not tell. But they somehow knew in their hearts that Futian had surely gotten stronger. Futian looked around at the people surrounding him. His micro-heavenly world was currently able to effect a greater change on the flow of time, and was getting better and better, progressing toward becoming a macro-heavenly path. If he let the people around him cultivate inside his micro-heavenly path world, there would be more time to be made use of. Young Master. Lady Qing came up next to him. Even when Futian had inherited the throne, she was still used to addressing him as Young Master. In her eyes, not only was Futian their hope, but he was even more so the offspring of Her Highness. He was someone special to her. He was the continuation of Her Highness's life, so she naturally regarded him as a close junior of hers. "What is it, Lady Qin? Is something the matter?" Futian asked. The human ancestor was a great emperor during the ancient times. After he fortuitously survived, he has been on the hunt for the other great emperors after the Great Tribulation in a desire to bring them back. Now it seems like he has found a way to do so. Previously, the 9 great emperors arrived. The one battling with His Highness now is also a divine emperor from ancient times, Lady Qin explained. Divine emperor? Futian furrowed his brows, feeling a little anxious. Even though he had uttered some rather unkind words before toward Dong Huang the Great, he nevertheless still greatly respected this father of his. Dong Huang the Great had given a lot, and from his perspective, he had already done the best he could have. Yes, he was an extraordinary great emperor, and had such outstanding achievements to his name that he could receive the title of Divine Emperor. Divine Emperor Pujuan was one of them. But you don't have to worry. Even though His Highness is from this age, and is the youngest out of the 6 great emperors, Buddha has said that he has the strongest enlightenment affinity out of them all. Even a divine emperor from the ancient times is no threat to His Highness. Lady Qin seemed to be highly confident in Dong Huang the Great's ability. The only one who could really constitute a threat to His Highness would probably be the human ancestor, and only him, Lady Qin continued. He was able to easily send a divine emperor and 8 great emperors out to battle. What a lineup! Just how many ancient characters has the human ancestor been able to get under his control all these years? Futian nodded. During the battle of the 6 great emperors, in a 4 versus 2 situation, his father could still get through without a scratch. He was highly skilled. Actually, if not for the lack of time, no matter your mother or his highness, they were capable of proving the path and reigning supreme. But the human ancestor did not allow them the opportunity, and so you were needed to carve out a different path. I understand. Futian nodded. Let's go out and take a look. In a flash, they disappeared from where they were standing. The next moment, Futian's figure appeared in the upper sky region of the heavenly imperial city. The cultivators there were extremely overwhelmed upon seeing Futian appear, as this was the first time he had made an appearance in the outer parts of society since becoming the heavenly emperor. This silver-haired young man was the true heir of the heaven realm and the present heavenly emperor, as the descendant of Donghuang the Great and the sovereign princess. He was also the king of the original realm previously, and the successor of Great Emperor Ziwei and Xinjia the Great Emperor. After Futian inherited the throne, many started digging into his background. His experiences of making it to the top step by step from the bottom had made him a legend. Who knew when was the time when he would reach the summit and stand at the top of the world, creating his own legendary story? Would the cultivators of the heaven realm have the chance to witness that? Futian raised his head to look at the battle above the skies. In the high regions of the boundless sky, 2 superbly powerful characters were having a whirlwind of a battle. Futian raised his head to look at the battle above the skies. In the high regions of the boundless sky, 2 superbly powerful characters were having a whirlwind of a battle. Currently, on the battlefield, the divine domains released by both of them were intersecting with each other. The dazzling silver world overlapped with the revelation world, its many silver pillars of light keeping the area in captivity. The whole world was flooded in an icy cold silver color. Divine Emperor Pujuan's physical body transformed into a beam of silver light and traversed within the silver-colored world. He repeatedly attacked Donghuang the Great from a close range, causing Donghuang the Great to be forced out again and again. As someone who could be compared with Xinjia the Great Emperor, his physical prowess was next to none. Donghuang the Great's attacking power was not weak, but he could not hurt Xinjia, the Great Emperor's body of the path. A beam of silver light struck across the sky, and Divine Emperor Pujuan's body transformed into an enormous silver spear, using the powers of the path. It directly pierced the heavens and the earth, leaving a ray of silver light trailing in its wake in the skies as it charged at Donghuang the Great. Donghuang the Great lifted and stretched out his hand. The surrounding defense made of the revelation divine power once again got penetrated. This time it was by the silver divine spear. The revelation divine sword clashed with it, but was smashed to pieces. The silver divine spear was like a supreme treasure, and its assault was continuous. Donghuang the Great released the revelation divine power within him to its maximum capacity. It enveloped the spear so that it was blocked again when it attacked. However, the silver spear started to vibrate violently, and its divine glow grew brighter and brighter. The remarkable silver divine light held Donghuang the Great's body captive, causing it also to turn silver and become like a statue. Break! Please keep reading on MYB0X and 0VL. A command was cried out, and Divine Emperor Pujuan's silver spear pierced straight into Donghuang the Great's body. The silver light was brightest at that moment, and Donghuang the Great's body was a cold and stiff silver ice statue. Futian, who was at the lower sky region, felt his heart skip a beat when he witnessed this scene. He immediately hovered up, wanting to enter the battlefield, but was stopped by Lady Qin. He looked at Lady Qin puzzled. Lady Qin nodded at him and said, "The opponent's divine power can break practically anything and of course, supremely powerful. But in this ultimate matchup of divine powers, Revelation divine power will be the victor. This has been destined from the start." Futian was surprised by Lady Qin's extraordinary confidence in his father. However, she must have a reason for saying that. He continued watching the skies above with his gaze piercing through the boundless space to the scene of battle. Presently, Dong Huang the Great was just a statue, and did not seem to have any advantage. The greatest great emperor of the present age is nothing much after all. Divine Emperor Pujuan's figure appeared, and he was carrying the spear in his hands. His voice betrayed the emotions of someone who had seen much throughout the years. The current world somehow left him feeling disappointed. Yet, just as he finished speaking, he frowned and blasted out his divine power. But it did not manage to smash the statue that was Dong Huang the Great into pieces. On the contrary, he could sense the divine power within Dong Huang the Great's body exploding fiercely. It was as if Dong Huang the Great's body was hollow, and in there, his divine power could not survive. Divine Emperor Pujuan heard a sigh just then as if someone was sighing for him. Surprisingly, the sigh came in the direction of the statue that Dong Huang the Great had turned into. Divine Emperor Pujuan felt the color drain from his face, and was about to retreat when he realized that he had been surrounded by divine power already. The moment he thrust the spear into Dong Huang the Great's body, all had been predestined. Bang! Divine Emperor Pujuan's body was suddenly blown to pieces. A piece of his physical body in the middle turned into nothingness, and was destroyed. He lowered his head to take a look, and saw that his body had broken apart. A horrifying divine power seeped frantically into his body, and Divine Emperor Pujuan started to tremble. At the same time, the statue turned back into the form of Dong Huang the Great, as if he had not suffered any harm at all. Fear appeared in Divine Emperor Pujuan's eyes. Were the current 6 great emperors that strong? Divine Emperor Pujuan, your attacking prowess is next to none, but your enlightenment needs work. You've lost, Dong Huang the Great remarked to him. Divine light encircled him, and he looked remarkably noble. Although he was a junior to Divine Emperor Pujuan, his magnanimity made it seem like he was the one who should command respect instead. Divine Emperor Pujuan looked at Dong Huang the Great. Dong Huang the Great naturally understood what the look in his eyes meant. Being a divine emperor, Divine Emperor Pujuan had every reason to be proud, and even at such a time, he would not open his mouth to beg for mercy. His prideful nature just would not allow it. But Dong Huang the Great merely sighed and said, "Although you are my senior, I am unable to let you go. Please forgive me." At that, divine power immediately devoured Divine Emperor Pujuan's body, causing him to slowly turn into nothingness bit by bit and disappear from the world, as if he had never existed before. Dong Huang the Great looked at Divine Emperor Pujuan's vanishing form, and was filled with emotions. From the beginning, he had made the preparations to finish off Divine Emperor Pujuan. Thus, he had lured him into this trap such that he would have no chance of escape. He and Yi Futian would have to face the human ancestor and his supporters in a fierce battle one day. A divine emperor would have dealt a lot of damage, so he definitely could not have let him go alive. He chose the most suitable solution to keep him here forever. He hovered down, and the cultivators in Heavenly Imperial City were shocked to see Dong Huang the Great return. That day, 9 great emperors had arrived to set up a fight, including a divine emperor from the ancient times. And Dong Huang the Great had finished all of them off, with not even one remaining. 9 great emperors all gone. Seeing the return of Dong Huang the Great surprised Yi Futian also. "Futian," Dong Huang the Great shouted, "why are you awake?" "I sense father's battle taking place and came here to watch," Yi Futian replied. Dong Huang the Great was momentarily stunned by hearing how Yi Futian addressed him, but a gratified smile soon grew on his face. The divine power that father used to kill Divine Emperor Pujuan seems to have overtaken the revelation divine power. Was that the evolution of the revelation divine power? Yi Futian was curious to know. "I'll explain it when we get back." Dong Huang the Great stalled on his reply, and the few of them returned to the 99 heavens. "In the past, when I was cultivating and meditating with your mother, we were looking for a way to get to the end of the cultivation journey. The revelation divine power is a divine power that has the capability of helping us to reach that end. So your mother did some tests on me in the hope that I could better draw out the mysteries regarding the evolution of the revelation divine power. And we did in fact succeed. The end of revelation divine power is nothingness. But up until now, I have not really mastered nothingness. If not, things won't be the way they are now. Futian slightly nodded upon hearing Dong Huang the Great's explanation. It seemed that it was very much thanks to his mother that his father could be on the same level as Devil Emperor and the others. Although the revelation divine power can point the way to the end of cultivation, it is not the right way. Therefore, you need not go down this way. Just fully incorporate all that your mother has left for you, and you will reach the end of the cultivation journey earlier than I. Dong Huang the Great continued with his explanation. This was what they all hoped for. On the God's Ruins continent, where Futian the Great had been before, great emperors continually land in the original realm after coming through the space teleportation grand matrix. All great emperors had sent a representative before them to keep an eye on the area. On the God's Ruins continent, where Futian the Great had been before, great emperors continually land in the original realm after coming through the space teleportation grand matrix. All great emperors had sent a representative before them to keep an eye on the area. The 7 great emperors that Futian had killed with one spear had also all come from there. And even now, the area would still be visited occasionally by various great emperors. At present, in the lower sky regions of the area, there was a mountain peak. At the top of the mountain peak was a figure quietly sitting cross-legged. He was tall and had a remarkable disposition. Just by sitting there, he did not seem like he belonged in the world. That figure was Ji Wudao. Ever since the battle he had lost to Futian, Ji Wudao seemed to have gone into anonymity and never made another appearance. He knew that after he had been defeated, Futian would receive his inheritance and fully take over. When that happened, he would have no hope of fighting with Futian anymore. Unless he received more than Futian, Ji Wudao quietly sat there, as if he had been cut off from the world, and no longer cared about the things in it. Even if war were to break out in the heaven realm, he would be the last to know, and had no interest in finding out either. Time passed day by day. In the present day, a strange phenomenon was seen in the heavens. After that, a terrifying aura descended, and the teleportation matrix was torn apart as a figure appeared in the high sky region. He stood there, overbearing as could be. The figure looked all around him while the emperor's might swept across him, and divine consciousness covered the boundless area. Following that, he fixed his gaze on the peak of the mountain where Ji Wudao was. Please keep reading on MYB0XN0VL. Calm in a flash, he headed toward Ji Wudao, and across the boundless space, a divine power descended upon Ji Wudao. Ji Wudao opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. He saw the figure that had just appeared, but his expression remained calm and unperturbed. In the past, an extraordinary cultivator had emerged from here. He was Futian the Great from ancient times, and his abilities were unparalleled. He had previously fought within the 99 heavens, and lost when the other party borrowed the power of the heavenly path to defeat him. As if he had sensed something, the great emperor that had appeared suddenly stopped in his tracks, and did not continue making his way toward Ji Wudao. Subsequently, he turned around and left as if he knew that Ji Wudao was not one to mess with. However, his wanting to leave did not mean he could leave now at this juncture. A terrifying divine power enveloped the area he was in, and Ji Wudao reached forward with his palm to grab across the distance. The great emperor's expression changed, and his divine power flared up. Then, a horrifying black hole appeared and devoured the divine power. The divine power flowed furiously into the black hole, and his body was also no longer under his control. His robe was fluttering frantically in the wind. The black hole grew bigger and bigger, and devoured the area he was in. Next, he too was finished and no more to be seen. Almost immediately, the terrifying aura vanished, and everything went back to normal. Ji Wudao shut his eyes and stood there quietly, as if nothing had taken place. He calmly continued cultivating. Not long had passed before he opened his eyes again, and took a look at the heavens. Then, he transported himself toward the higher sky region. Reaching out his palm, he ripped a hole in the teleportation matrix, and disappeared into the hole. After his departure, the hole revealed itself, and everything was back to normal, as if nothing unusual had happened. From afar, a cultivator who had witnessed all of this felt his heart beating faster. That was Ji Wudao, who had once been thought to be the next heavenly emperor. Where did he go? In the heavenly palace, in the 99 heavens, Dong Huang the Great had also received the news about what had happened in the God's Ruins continent. He had been chatting with Yi Futian, and his godfather Yu Tu and Yi Baichuan. They were all fatherly figures in one way or another to Yi Futian. The news was brought by Dong Huang the Great's direct disciple Du Yu. Dong Huang the Great frowned slightly after hearing the news. Yi Futian too was surprised, and he asked, "Father, are those cultivators also ancient emperors? Where did they come from?" He had previously killed 7 great emperors with his spear. The 7 of them seemed to have been gods of judgment, but up till now, Yi Futian still had no idea where they were from. Dong Huang the Great's expression turned graven after hearing Yi Futian's question. He answered, "Back then, your mother already had some inkling that these things would happen. We had also discussed this issue, and felt that it could be related to the battle of the old heavenly path. The heavenly path is a conscious being, and when one reaches the ultimate cultivation level, they would be able to become the heavenly path, also the god of the heavenly laws, and the god of origins. Of course, you know about this," Dong Huang the Great added. "In other words, the universe we are in is vast and without end. It contains numerous worlds and unlimited space. However, it can be created by cultivators who have reached the ultimate cultivation level. We must ask ourselves, how long has civilization existed? Probably hundreds of millions of years. In this long period, how much has happened that we don't know of? During the period before the disintegration of the heavenly path, we called it ancient times. But is there an even earlier period then?" Dong Huang the Great asked. Yi Futian looked thoughtful after hearing what Dong Huang the Great said. He thought he understood what Dong Huang the Great had in mind. The Buddha said that there is a world in every flower and knowledge in every leaf. In Buddhism, there are thousands of big worlds and thousands of little worlds. Who wrote these Buddhist classics? Dong Huang the Great's expression also became serious. Is the heavenly path the only one? Is the universe we are in the only one? Dong Huang the Great's contemplations caused the cultivators to fall into silence. The area grew acutely quiet. Were there any other heavenly paths? Were there any other universes? Yi Futian had created a micro-heavenly path within himself. If the micro-heavenly path was completed, in the future, many cultivators could go in there to train. Would they in the myriads of worlds in there know that there was another world outside? This was also part of the reason your mother wanted to recreate the heavenly path back then. If other universes and worlds existed, the recreated heavenly path should be the guardian. Thus, she aimed to reach the ultimate cultivation level, and also hoped the people of the world would desire to reach a higher plane. Dong Huang the Great drawled on slowly. And now there are some things that are worth exploring further. But for now, you do not need to bother about these things. I'll find the answer, and when I find it, I'll let you know. For you, your present goal is still cultivation. No matter what we face in the future, we are still reliant on great power." Yi Futian nodded. Dong Huang the Great's remarks were thought-provoking. If the 7 great emperors he had killed were not from ancient times, were they cultivators from other worlds? Was it because they could find the path to this universe after the disintegration of the heavenly path? No one knew. Where to did Ji Wudao go after tearing a hole in the teleportation matrix? More and more cultivators arrived at the 99 heavens. From Yi Imperial Palace in the God's Ruins continent, from Ziwei Imperial Palace in Ziwei Segmentum, and Heavenly Mandate Academy, many who trusted in Yi Futian were willing to follow him to the heaven realm to cultivate and become part of the great army of cultivators in the 99 heavens. More and more cultivators arrived at the 99 heavens. From Yi Imperial Palace in the God's Ruins continent, from Ziwei Imperial Palace in Ziwei Segmentum, and Heavenly Mandate Academy, many who trusted in Yi Futian were willing to follow him to the heaven realm to cultivate and become part of the great army of cultivators in the 99 heavens. At present, the entire 99 heavens were enveloped by a peculiar aura. The power of the heavenly path was already imbued within the 99 heavens, and the place was isolated from the rest of the outside world, becoming a micro-world on its own. In fact, All the cultivators in the 99 heavens were able to sense the dense aura of the great path. They were able to feel the existence of the path from this micro-world, making it easier for them to meditate and improve at an extremely fast pace. In the 81 heavens, a group of people was gathered in front of the Fey Palace to discuss the way of cultivation. 10 years metamorphosis and senior is reaching the demigod level. Congrats, someone said, and the person beside him laughed while shaking his head. I can't claim the credit for this. It's all thanks to this piece of land. I vaguely feel that the environment of the 99 heavens micro-world that we are part of now is unlike ancient times. It might exceed it. Perhaps it's because our palace lord had altered the cultivation environment of the heavenly path. Do you guys feel the same way? Yes, we do. This micro-world originated from the power of the heavenly path, which is the mother of our palace lord. Now that our palace lord has integrated them and altered the cultivation environment here, this micro-world might possibly be the best cultivation ground in the world. Those who left the 99 heavens are probably regretting it now. The person beside nodded. You guys are still calling him palace lord? Someone else asked laughingly, and the two who had been speaking realized that they had made a mistake. They replied with good humor. We've gotten too used to it already. But now that the palace lord has become the heavenly emperor, we should change how we address him. I, on the other hand, don't feel like it really matters. Considering the magnanimity of our palace lord, I doubt he cares what we call him. But some felt that calling him palace lord was also a form of respect. Brothers, someone shouted and came over at that moment. The group of people turned around to see a middle-aged man with a purple robe and an exceptional demeanor. He could not help but smile. Younger brother Zhua, you are finally here. When I was cultivating at the God's Ruins continent, I encountered a relic and was not able to make it in time. Afterward, I found out about all that happened and rushed over here. Luckily it didn't take too long, the middle-aged man explained. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. You didn't take too long? Someone laughed. 10 years is not long. In that period, has older brother Wang reached demigod level already? 10 years. The middle-aged man was momentarily taken aback. What do you mean? Is this a joke? Don't tell me you have gone crazy after training outside, younger brother Zhua? The group stared at the middle-aged man. That's right. It's been 10 years since we started cultivating here. Another person piped up. Impossible. The person called Zhua adamantly stated. Merely a few months have passed since our palace lord became the heavenly emperor. I immediately rushed here after hearing the news, and I took only 10 or so days. How could it be that 10 years have passed already? The people sensed something amiss upon hearing this. They looked at one another in confusion, and, after a round of discussion, realized that he was not lying. Currently the world is in chaos. How could it be that 10 years would pass so peacefully in the heaven realm without any trouble? You will understand once you think about it. The person whose surname was Zhua continued. It was a great shock to everyone there. How could cultivators like them calculate time incorrectly? And it could not have been a mass hallucination or misunderstanding either. If both sides are true, there can be only two explanations, somebody ventured. Which are? The first is that we are in an illusionary fantasy world, that person answered. At once, they all released the essence of the great path, and divine light started flowing around them. It did not seem like an illusion. The second explanation is that the nature of time in this micro-world has changed. As he said this, his heart skipped a beat, as did the hearts of the others. When we were first cultivating in Yi Imperial Palace, a time magical item had appeared before. So the second explanation should be right. They had already established quickly that the first was just not possible. Every person took a deep breath and looked up at the sky as they reeled from the shock. The 99 heavens had been transformed into a micro-world of its own, and the nature of time in this micro-world has been changed too. Who knows, perhaps the laws have been changed as well, making it so that there is no longer a need to rely on the magical item. Our palace lord can directly make alterations to the natural laws of this micro-world. They fell silent. Was their palace lord already able to perform at such a high level in the integration of the heavenly path? She naturally knew why she had light in her heart. Her origins were different from the Dark Sovereign. The Dark Sovereign had met a person who brought her from the light into darkness. As for herself, she had met a person who brought her light in the darkness. Their experiences were completely opposite. This world of false kindness has long lost its light. There is only darkness. Everything he does is not for your sake. It is merely your talent that has caught his eye. There are so many unfortunate souls in the world. Why did he not save them? He only saved you because you are different. The Dark Sovereign told Yi Qingyao. It is the same for me. I have taught you to cultivate to bring you into darkness. I am not trying to save you. He came to the dark world, and you have also made him feel that agony. However, he was not affected by it, Yi Qingyao said somewhat stubbornly. She was naturally referring to Yi Futian. He had previously been to the dark world. The Dark Sovereign continued. What he experienced here is not his real life, so he naturally is unaffected by it. How could a person with no ambition reach where he is today? He has become the faith of the original realm, and the god of the heaven realm. Yi Qingyao did not answer. Right then the Dark Sovereign frowned. She put on her mask. Her terrifying aura immediately surged, opening a passageway. She looked towards the passageway and asked, "What is the matter?" "The members of the heaven realm have come to see Yi Qingyao." The person on the other side replied. The Dark Sovereign revealed a surprised look. Yi Qingyao also walked over. "Let's go." The two of them immediately passed through the passageway and appeared on the other side. They saw the person who had come. "It was you Tuesday. What business do you have with us?" asked the Dark Sovereign as she stared at Yu Tuesday. Yu Tu glanced at her, and then at Yi Qingyao beside her. He then said, "The Heavenly Emperor has asked me to deliver a gift to you." As he said this, he retrieved a box and passed it to Yi Qingyao. "Farewell," said Yu Tuesday. He left immediately after he handed the item to Yi Qingyao. The item was a treasure of time and space. The 99 heavens of the heaven realm had become a small independent world. The 99 heavens of the heaven realm had become a small independent world. At the peak of the heavenly palace, Yi Futian sat cross-legged as he cultivated with his eyes closed. His figure was bathed in divine halos, and he shone together with the sun and the moon. It was no longer an ordinary body of flesh, his body was Wei. Yi Futian's world of the micro-heavenly path had evolved and reached perfection. It was an independent cosmos that was functioning orderly. It had countless planets and stars with continents of their own. It was a different space. Everything inside was no different from the real world. The only difference was that there were very few people in this universe. Many continents had only one person on them. Each person controlled an entire continent. They were the gods of said continents. For instance, Feng Xiyuan was on a continent right now. His planet was filled with the divine force of space. It was as though the entire continent was formed from it. Feng Xiyuan cultivated here alone and comprehended the law of space. Feng Xiyuan was now cultivating very diligently. He knew his place. The heavens and earth were about to change. In the not-too-distant future, he would be fighting for his master. Now that his master was the current heavenly emperor, as his disciple, he could not bring dishonor to his master's image. The 4 disciples of Yi Futian each controlled a world of their own. Each world had a different divine power. Who among them would cultivate the fastest and become the strongest in the future? Feng Xiyuan was clear about one thing. His master had established the heavenly path and was the ruler of this universe. That meant that in the future, they would be gods who ruled over the various laws. The continent he was on was the continent of a god. No matter what, he had to cultivate diligently and become a powerful Tianshan of this future universe. That way, he would not tarnish the reputation of being a direct disciple of the Creator God. It was not just Feng Xiyuan, Gu Donglu, Yi Wuchen, Hua Jiyu Blind Tai, Lord Chun, Chen Yi Emperor Shi, Hua Qingqing Yaya, and the others all had their own worlds of divine power. Yi Futian directly filled them with the divine power of law, creating the best cultivation conditions for each of them. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU right then, Xia Qingyuan was also cultivating on a continent on her own. Here, there was a tribulation of life and death, and the divine power of swordsmanship. Xiaqing Yuan was bathed in this power and cultivated quietly. Their cultivation environments made those who came later, including the many cultivators of the heaven realm, envious. Very few people had the chance to personally receive Yi Futian's divine power of law to aid them in their cultivation. The most important thing was to improve their abilities. Instead of panicking, they would cross the bridge when they came to it. What exactly is the end goal of cultivation? Yi Futian mumbled. Is it to rule over the heavenly path? You might need to go seek answers. Currently, you are the person who is closest to the heavenly path, Dong Huang the Great said to Yi Futian. Yi Futian established the micro-heavenly path after merging the heavenly path world she left behind. Therefore, in a sense, Yi Futian was the person closest to it. Yi Futian nodded. He then asked, Father, how is the situation in the outside world now? Are there any abnormal movements in the human realm? Nope. Dong Huang the Great shook his head and said, all is quiet. Perhaps this is the calm before the storm. Last time, the human ancestor assigned 9 great emperors to attack us. One of them was even a divine great emperor. The human ancestor didn't even bat an eyelid when sacrificing a cultivator at that level. We can imagine the kind of manpower he possesses based on this. After his failure last time, his next attack will most likely be even more astonishing. Dong Huang the Great added, of course, it might be that the human ancestor himself is also waiting for something. There might be things that he has yet to accomplish. Otherwise, he would have already attacked. Yi Futian nodded his head. He also agreed with his father's perspective. The human ancestor had extreme power at his fingertips. However, he could not utilize it yet. He was similarly waiting for the right moment. He might have unfinished business. Father, I wish to venture outside, said Yi Futian. Where are you planning to go? Dong Huang the Great asked. I do not know, replied Yi Futian as he shook his head. I wish to wander around and maybe visit Spirit Mountain. The Buddhist scriptures are broad and profound. Back in the day, I couldn't understand many manuscripts. I might be able to have a different understanding of them if I try again now. Go then, said Dong Huang the Great as he nodded his head. I will look over this place on your behalf. With Yi Futian's current cultivation plane, he did not need to worry about anything. There was probably no one in the world who could kill Yi Futian single-handedly aside from the person who had killed her back then. Yi Futian left the 99 heavens. He had reached a bottleneck in his cultivation. He wanted to figure out what the end goal of cultivation was. After Yi Futian and Bitter Zen had their exchange, the former comprehended and cultivated on Spirit Mountain for a while longer. He also met with other Buddha lords to discuss Buddhist doctrine. Buddhism sought emptiness. Everything was empty. They believed that frustration and suffering did not exist. Time and space also did not exist. Everything was born from thoughts. The goal of cultivating Buddhist doctrine was to sever these thoughts and reach enlightenment. Buddhist doctrine trained the heart. The end goal of its cultivation was to be freed from life, death, and reincarnation, to no longer suffer in the 6 paths of reincarnation and achieve detachment. This was where Buddhist doctrine differed from the cultivations of other worlds. Other cultivators sought the heavenly path and cultivated to be one with the heavens. Their end goal was to one with the heavenly path. However, since the great paths were all connected, then what was beyond the higher planes of cultivation? Yi Futian left Spirit Mountain after cultivating there for several days. He continued to travel the world and went to many places. He returned to the Divine Prefecture and came to the Four-Corner Continent in the Shangqing domain. The current Four-Corner Continent was no longer what it used to be. It was prosperous, especially Four-Corner City, which had multitudes of cultivators. All of this stemmed from Four-Corner Village, which had a master who was a great emperor. Aside from master, Yi Futian also emerged from Four-Corner Village. In a way, Yi Futian was the village's spokesperson in the outside world. Such a place naturally drew countless cultivators over. In the Shangqing domain, the status of Four-Corner Village had long surpassed that of the domain chief's manor. It was designated as a holy land. Right then, Yi Futian appeared outside of Four-Corner Village. He had not been back for a long time. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Now that he had returned, Yi Futian vaguely felt that the village was different. There were no changes to the village. He was the one who had changed. His cultivation plane was far superior to that back in the day. He naturally could sense more things now. He faintly felt that there was a mysterious power in the village. It seemed to be the power of time. What is going on? Thought Yi Futian, as he revealed an incredulous look. This was something he could not detect before. Now he could sense it, but he still could not figure out its secrets. Before he started his journey, when he said that he wanted to travel around, his father Dong Huang the Great told him to visit Master in Four Corner Village when he had the time. Yi Futian himself had also wanted to pay Master a visit. Given that his father had brought it up, he did just that. Yi Futian had always been aware that Master was not an ordinary person. The latter did not concern himself with the affairs of the world, and stayed in seclusion in the village. Their bodies were but insignificant shells for cultivators who reached high levels like Yi Futian. Master said, "You are already the heavenly emperor. It would help if you were not so polite. Have a seat." Yi Futian sat cross-legged in front of Master. He said, "I will always be a disciple and a junior in front of you. It's the thought that counts," Master replied while nodding. "Master, are you a cultivator from ancient times as well?" Yi Futian asked curiously. "I have known you for many years, and have always been calling you Master. I still have no idea what your name is." "I am considered a cultivator from ancient times," Master responded. "My Taoist name is Mufeng." Yi Futian made a mental note of Master's name. Then he asked again, "Master, you have cultivated for eons. You are knowledgeable. What's your opinion about the end goal of cultivation?" "The end goal of cultivation?" Master mumbled, seemingly pondering about this question. Then he said, "Perhaps the end goal is different for everyone. I also do not know what the true end goal of cultivation is. If someone becomes the heavenly path, could that person be considered to have reached the end goal of cultivation?" Yi Futian further inquired. "If the person merely transforms into the heavenly path, I think it cannot be considered as having attained the end goal," Master answered. "Thank you for the pointers," Yi Futian said. "Your father Dong Huang the Great cultivated revelation divine power. The end goal of revelation is the void. Can nothingness be considered an end?" asked Master. "Everything in the world is material. If someone manages to control everything with shape and form in the world, is that the end? The world still has countless spirits and wills formed from energy. If someone were to control all of the energy in the world, would that be the end? No one knows what the end is, and whether we can even reach it," lamented Master. "I have also been contemplating this. This world is endlessly vast, and yet there are existences from other universes. Are there people who can traverse the different universes at will? If such people do exist, I wonder whether they can be considered to have reached the end of space." Master continued, "There is also time. Have you ever considered that if everything in the world can be controlled through cultivation, is it also the same for time? When people say that the past and future are unattainable, is it just because our cultivation planes are insufficient to achieve it? If we are powerful enough, could time be just a line, and we can travel along with it as we please?" Yi Futian was somewhat astonished. He had never considered this before. If one could travel along the timeline at will, wouldn't that be the same as controlling the past and the future? If so, what was the end?